this topic, I mean, ideally, everybody that is watching this type of a show is a fan of paranormal TV to some extent. Um, and I can't, it's a maligned, it's a much maligned genre of storytelling, of television telling, because it's kind of easy to make fun of. I'll be the first to admit that. But at the same time, I can't really bash it too much because it inspired me in a lot of ways to get into investigation. And now I had already been telling stories and into the interesting world of the paranormal uh, a lot longer. I put out my first documentary in 1999, which was 5 years. As Michael Clean has pointed out, I didn't even think of it, but Michael Clean, who's a folklorist and historian, he pointed out that my documentary came out 5 years before Ghost Hunters on Sci-Fi Channel came out. So there you go. I started all this. No, and I was not ghost hunting at all. I didn't even know the phrase ghost hunting. I don't know how common of a phrase that was. But I really enjoyed going to these places and telling the stories. And but then one summer, I got kind of hooked on Ghost Adventures. And as fun and wild a show as that is, it made me think like, well, I'm going to these places anyway. I'm doing the interviews. I might as well bring some gear and just see what happens. Even if I'm not really investigating, if I have some of this stuff on me, as long as I'm already there. And wouldn't you know it, sometimes, not always, usually not, but sometimes amazing things happened. And so yeah, I've had really fun experiences ghost hunting as a result of these shows. Starting out just as a folklorist and historian first, and then these shows inspired a lot. And in the meantime, in the last 5 or 6 years, I've gone to market with different production companies, developing shows, pitching shows, usually in the realm of the paranormal. One of the really funny things was that one year we went to the market with a paranormal show that we developed and worked with executives and crafted our pitch and got it all out there. And it just was not a good time. People weren't buying paranormal shows anymore. So now it's like, okay, well, let's regroup and develop a show, because people were still very interested, and we went down the road with a handful of these different networks, including, I mean, we pitched to everybody, but History, I think, was one of the big ones that was very interested, and Travel Channel was. But they're like, dude, we are at capacity when it comes to paranormal programming. So, if you guys develop something else, get back to us. So, sure enough, of course, we develop a show. I think this was last year, or maybe 2 years ago, that was very much, it's still like a histories mysteries type of show, with archaeology being a key component of it and lost and forgotten history being the crux of what we were doing. And I can't tell you how many times executives got back to us a year later and said, this is a really great show. How could we incorporate a paranormal element? And that just goes to show you, I mean, there's different executives that are always shuffling around between different places. People like different things, and the market is constantly changing. So you can never really build a show for the market, and that's a great example of why you don't do that, because it's always changing. But really, I wanted to go through, try to give you guys some perspective a little bit on the production side of things. I have had very little interaction, very little involvement with paranormal programming, but I have been able to be involved with some on some level. And also, I wanted to just chat with you guys, see what you guys suggested of what your favorite shows are, what your guilty pleasure shows are, maybe, because sometimes you watch a paranormal show and you're like, this isn't really necessarily good, but I tune in every week anyway. And again, I'm a Ghost Adventures fan, and I will, as long as you enjoy it, it's not guilty pleasures. If it's making you happy, it's a good thing. But I still know, it's not like these guys are scientists. Uh, but as always, what's gone on in the news in the last week? Coronavirus deaths are up to, I think it's 117,000 in the U.S. The very good news is that our daily death counts are much lower than they've been in a long time. It's in this like mid 600s right now. The bad side, or I don't want to say bad, but the reason for caution is that in many states, like half the states, the counts are going up for infections, number of people sick. That's a very hotly debated thing, but at the end of the day, all I'm talking about, I always want people to do is urge caution, wear those masks, socially distance. This past week was the first time since February. I think the last place I was at maybe was seeing Sunspot at McAuliffe's Pub in Racine. That may have been the last place publicly I was until the lockdown happened. I just want to name drop Sunspot as well. Ted and I are. Oh my gosh, no, that's a great example. This is a great example. Robin from the Galena Ghost Tours. By the way, the Galena Ghost Tours are on right now. They are doing them. Oh, Robin, you can correct me. I think you said Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but maybe also Wednesday. Due to coronavirus restrictions, they are down to about 10 people per tour. But I know as a tour guide, and I know that my bottom line didn't like it, but I loved when I had a smaller group because then you can have that closer connection. You're still telling the same stories, but it was so much easier to connect with individual people. And I, as a guide, got a lot more out of it and really enjoyed when I had those small groups. It didn't financially make sense to do it, but I actually liked it a lot more. So this is a great time to get on out to Galena. And this is the thing. As I was talking about, this is the first time I've been out and about. Yep, Wednesday too, says Robin. This is the first time I've been out and about, and I met up with a good friend, a great supporter of What's Your Ghost Story. I used to speak at her shop all the time. And just really a tremendous friend and good person, Kathleen Wicks. We went out to a place called Docks, which is right on the water in, I believe it's Wakanda. But the tables were all spread out. It was outside. You were not near anybody. The servers had masks on. The customers didn't, which I actually felt safe there, which I'm very nervous. I want to be safe. I've had more and more friends lose loved ones in the last week. And that is it's hard. I mean, it's hard to see. You want to see your friends going through it, and then you bring it to yourself. I had a friend lose an Uncle Larry, and I have an Uncle Larry, and I want him to be okay. So it's what it's all about. It's not about keeping yourself safe. It's about keeping your loved ones safe. So please do. I'm going to always stress this until we have a solid, tried and true vaccine. Everybody, take care of yourselves. Taking care of yourself takes care of those around you. Okay. Enough with that. Back to ghost shows. And, Robin might have an opinion or two on ghost shows, as we've had some conversations recently. I like to start off these shows by doing an icebreaker question, usually something not related to anything paranormal. But this was the icebreaker question I would use when I was giving my LA Hauntings tour. As we get everybody in the van, we do our introductions outside, but as we hit the road and get ready to be stuck in LA traffic, I would ask, hey, what ghost shows do people like? And it would always be a great time eater as we were trying to kill time to get to the first location. Because again, if you're on one of these tours, chances are you have a favorite ghost show. So Barb Cronkrite. I used to love celebrity ghost stories. I loved the recreations. The stories were told so convincingly most of the time. Not sure if it's a guilty pleasure, but I miss it. Barb, that was so cool that you brought that up because well, I've got some insight on that. Maybe not the best insight, or not the most favorable insight, but those are really great shows. Those celebrity ghost story shows. And I thought I had that idea. I was actually at a point where I was meeting a lot of celebrities, and me being me, I would find out what their ghost stories were and find out that some of these people had really great stories. I'm going to do a show on celebrity ghost stories. And then a quick Google search showed me that there was one that was on the air already for a season or two. But I do have a friend who was a celebrity, is a celebrity, and she had some incredible stories of her own because she lived in this super haunted house up in Laurel Canyon, which you may know as being this mecca of music in the 1960s. And earlier in history, there's the Houdini mansion. Bess Houdini definitely lived there. We don't really think Harry Houdini ever lived there. I think it was after his death. But Harry Houdini did shoot a movie at the top of the hill there at Lookout Point on top of Laurel Canyon. And going back way, way further, this was an area that would be a place that people in LA proper, in the city, would vacation in. Back in the when you are riding your horses off to the country, this would be where they would go. And there would be a trolley that would bring people from the base of the mountain up to where the resorts were. And actually, you can still see some remnants of the trolley tracks, even to this day, in the middle of Laurel Canyon. So this was a very lawless time period where banditos would come and Shanghai tourists and rob them and all that, which is definitely bad for business for the resort owners. So what do? They hire gunmen, they hire vigilantes to take out these bandits. And what do they do then is, as a warning, hang them up by the tree, their corpses, as a warning that, hey, this area is being protected and being patrolled. So knock it off. Meanwhile, though, the well-to-do tourists that are coming in from the city would then have to load up on that trolley and pass hanging dead criminals that are hanging from the tree. The hanging tree actually doesn't exist anymore. It's been, I don't know if it died or got cut down for whatever reason, but the stump is still there. So this is a place that's very modern. It's very high end today. The upper echelon of Hollywood, great iconic place to live, but it's got a deep and dark history. And so yes, this one friend of mine lived on Laurel Canyon and had some incredible paranormal experiences. And celebrity ghost stories came calling, saying, "Hey, if you have a story, let us film it." And she had some conversations, but she was working a lot. She didn't really need the money. It wasn't a priority. And then, everybody, especially in Hollywood, has these ebbs and flows of a lot of work coming in versus no work coming in. And she took this opportunity to go back to school. And she's like, well, you know what? This could pay for some tuition. It was several grand to just come to the studio and tell her personal ghost story, which involved all sorts of moving objects and people being kind of tormented and traumatized in different ways. And so she told her story, and then the producer said, yeah, and then it manifested next to your bed. And what did it look like? She's like, well, no, I never saw anything. I didn't see anything. Like, no, you saw something. Like, no, I didn't. And she felt like she couldn't leave, like she wasn't going to get her paycheck unless she said, and eventually it manifested in her room. So that sucks, right? Because it had a great ghost story, it just wasn't visual for camera. So she played ball. She really didn't want to, but at the same time, she kind of needed the cash, and here we are. And meanwhile, there's a great spinoff that I know Max, who I think I saw popped in. Max and I used to love watching, which was The Haunting of, where it would just it would pick up on these celebrity ghost stories, many, many years after the fact with, I believe her name was Kim Russo. She was a psychic, and they would go back to where the celebrity had their encounter, now with a psychic, and see if the psychic picked anything up. I'm very skeptical in general, especially when it comes to TV. It's hard to really fully believe that this psychic hadn't at least watched the previous installment to know exactly what the celebrity had experienced and therefore be able to play off of it. Anytime it was a haunting at a public and maybe even a famous place, it really kind of was boring. But sometimes this psychic would seem to have a connection to somebody in the celebrity's past that maybe is what led to the haunting. And those were always really, I don't know, I'd go with guilty pleasure for myself watching those. I know Max and I watched a whole bunch of them when they were on. I don't think that's on anymore, but people can chime in. So you can see over one of my shoulders, boom, over here, Destination Truth was one of the really great ones. Josh Gates is just a great host, first off. Very, very, very good host, which makes the show way better. And it was also interesting because I've had the fortune to be able to meet him at, what was it? It was the Chicago Paracon that Ursula Bielski put on several years ago, and to kind of hear him speak, and it turns out he's not actually a ghost guy. He doesn't believe in ghosts, but he does believe in, or at least has more of an interest in Bigfoot or Yetis, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call these bipedal, large ape descendants, perhaps. So that also kind of creates a better barometer that this guy isn't going nuts all the time. But oh yeah, when it comes to Destination Truth, I had the opportunity to speak directly to and also hear from at the Shooting Star Paracon in Menominee, Minnesota, Jael DePardo and Aaron Ryder, to hear about what it was like working on these shows. And this is when you really get reminded that these are productions that have a schedule to keep above all. Like, we wish that these shows were more scientific and they were all about getting to the bottom of things, getting answers, staying until the job is done. However, after a week or so of shooting at this location, they're on the plane to the next episode shoot no matter what. So I can't imagine how frustrating it would be for them, because you could tell these people actually really do care about what they were doing. They were having some amazing adventures. They were putting their lives on the line to be able to tell these stories, to be able to make this show happen. But they would have to pack a bag, I should say, like a duffel bag to be able to go to the Himalayas and also Bermuda, if they were covering the Bermuda Triangle, they had one time to pack, and they left to go shoot their season and didn't come back until the season was done. Uh, they should get Purple Hearts. I mean, the amount of work and exhaustion that they have to go through is just nuts. And that's something that can feel lacking a lot when you are talking about these shows. That, boy, the research seemed a little bit sloppy. It wasn't great at this one. It's because they're trying to do it all at the same time, like the entire season in one sitting, and it's unfortunate. It's the nature of the beast. Um, if you're looking for the highest of integrity, watch a documentary where some filmmaker just lived and breathed the same story for a year or two, as opposed to this. But it's still entertaining. It's one of the reasons I love these shows so much, is that you get, it's almost like looking at a buffet. You look at a season, it's like, oh, look at all these places. Maybe I haven't heard of any of them. And now I can then do my own deeper research. And that's really what I get a lot out of it personally. Okay, so Cody Novak says, does MTV's Fear count? And great call. Great deep dive. That show, it's been so long. I remember when that was on, it was early 2000s, and it wasn't so much about ghost hunting at all. It was about the nature of fear. And well, first off, from a TV producer standpoint, nothing is more entertaining than watching somebody get startled, get scared. So yeah, Fear was great. And on that note, there's a show that's on now, just finished its second season. Who knows if it'll come back or not, but Destination Fear, which is kind of a spin-off of Ghost Adventures, because it's still produced by Zach Bagans. We watched it because they were just at the Sheboygan Asylum that closed down. I think it was 2002 is when it closed down. But they also stop off at Benson's, which is somewhere that Wendy took me for my birthday, because it is a huge UFO mecca. People would go out to this location to look up into the sky and see strange lights, and they've got a binder full of them. It was really just neat to see a place that you've been in the past now on TV. And that's actually something else that I love about these shows. Last week I was gonna head to bed. I'm like, let's just see if I can knock one more thing off the DVR, and it was a Ghost Adventures double feature. I'm like, maybe I'll put this on for a little bit, but zone out. They went to Good Springs, Nevada, the Pioneer Saloon, which is one of those handful of locations that I went to before they did. So, of course, it's exciting to see a place you've been on TV. And then the next episode was where they go to Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, which, of course, is a place I wrote about in the book. I'm like, well, the Good Springs one, I'll see that. I want to watch that again. Because I've been to Bachelor's Grove so many times, it's not that big of a deal. But then you see the camera crew walking down the path that goes into the woods to Bachelor's Grove, and it's like, this is kind of fun. Especially now when we're in quarantine, this is kind of a way to feel like I'm out adventuring as well. Also, at that point, I realized the genius, and you don't want to put the word genius and Ghost Adventures together too often, but realize the genius of the title of that show, which I made fun of a lot when it first came out. But these guys are not ghost scientists. They always try to make it sound like they're doing scientific experiments, but they're ghost adventurers. They're out there, and they're trying to capture the fun and the excitement and adventure of these locations. And that's what really a lot of what I get out of it. And on that note, then, I have to give a huge shout out to the Ghost Brothers. That was my favorite show when it was on. They came back for a short season last year, but that was the first paranormal show I'd ever seen where they captured the fun of it all. Listen, you are a couple of people with friends. You're going to these crazy locations, trying to talk to dead people that are invisible and in the room with you. How can you take it too seriously? Like, of course, it's going to get scary sometimes, but for the most part, you're doing absurd stuff. So have fun with it, because it is fun. There's a lot more laughs than scares when you're hanging out with friends investigating a haunted location. And so that's something I really loved about the show Ghost Brothers, is that they allowed themselves to have fun with it. And it was, I don't know, I like that about it so much. Oh, Cody points out also that on FX, I think it was Scariest Places on Earth. And he said, I love how they had Zelda Rubinstein narrate it. If I'm remembering that right. And yes, you are. And she also, she was the voice of FX for a little bit too. But she was the scary old woman, "This house is clear," from Poltergeist. So yeah, how awesome that they had Zelda come in and be the narrator for those programs. On the same line as World's Scariest Places, This is one that really I think I got a lot of inspiration out of looking back was Haunted History on the History Channel, and that was a show I really don't like reenactments. They come off as so corny, but Haunted History, it was just such a straightforward. This is the ghost story, and then we see this B-roll of actors reenacting it. It was actually really well done. I liked it a lot. Brian von Soffel mentions that he never misses Paranormal Almanac on Facebook Live. So I don't know that one. So I'll have to look that one up. If anybody else has seen it, let me know. I feel like it's so. I mean, and this could be showing me wrong, but I feel like people don't go so much to YouTube or here to watch the ghost shows. It's kind of a cable thing. But who knows? Maybe it's changing. I hope it is because I've got all my stuff on YouTube. Dr. Ned, who chimed in actually last week as well when we were talking with an archaeologist. He had some fun alien conspiracy theories that he was throwing at us. But he mentioned supernatural, and he's still waiting for a hole to another dimension to appear in his apartment. So it's awesome that he brought up this show, because I was thinking, as most of the responders were thinking, about reality TV, ghost hunting type shows. But yeah, I just said Paranormal TV, and that was a show that was so rooted in all kinds of folklore, paranormal lore, and I will still say it's some of the worst acting I've ever seen on TV. The two leads, no less. But when I did watch that show, I would always feel like I think I would love this writer's room. Like, these writers were pulling on really great known paranormal stories. We did actually a couple of episodes on A Ghost Hunter Watches that series, and we're going to do the next one we do, if I can get around to it, is going to be a supernatural episode where we talk about the Crossroads, the Robert Johnson going down to the Crossroads, selling his soul. There's a great documentary on Netflix about that as well. So I'll tie in the supernatural episode and also that documentary about just the lore of this blues man in the Mississippi Delta going to the Crossroads, selling his soul to the devil, and then becoming one of the best blues, maybe just one of the best guitar players that has ever lived. But those are the types of things that the writers for Supernatural would base an episode on, which is so great. John Dreisga, always a wonderful commenter. All-time favorite, I have to go old school and pick In Search Of. Nothing like being 12 at home by yourself and getting the snot scared out of you. Of the current offerings, I pick Kindred Spirits. I like how they investigate and try to help people out. The guilty pleasure is Dead Files. Amy Allen has about 36,000 crazy facial expressions. Yeah, I don't know if there's any medication for that. So, going through these, In Search Of. Winnie and I watched an episode of In Search Of last night. I had seen individual segments more recently, and I don't know, it may have predated me just barely enough, because I know people that are about my age, maybe a little older, that know it, but anybody younger than me isn't really aware of it. And I do have to give a shout out to Sunspot, because it was narrated and hosted by Leonard Nimoy, and in their really great song Shakari, they mention In Search Of.
In Search Of was the show that made it cool for UFOs. It weirded out my little mind.
It's very interesting stuff still. It is very heavily reenactments, but as I think Chris Hatton pointed out on a different comment, the music from it was really good. It still is, and it does kind of like instantly put you in that place that, like, ooh, it's ghost story time. So yeah, In Search Of, and so much of it, maybe even all of it, is on YouTube now, which is how we watched it, and it's really fascinating sometimes that a well-known ghost story will be passed down and passed down and passed down, and then somehow just stop. And I feel like that happens more than you think. A really good recent example is the Stull Cemetery near Wichita, which, when the internet was new, everybody was all abuzz about this really bizarre cemetery, this farm cemetery that has all sorts of demonic and satanic connections to it. And that's part of the folklore. It's part of what makes it extra creepy. Also, it's in the middle of nowhere, so it's super dark, and you have to make an effort to go to it, which of course I've done a couple times. And then in more recent years, you can't find anything about it. It just, somehow that tale, just people lost interest in. So I think that's one of the cool things about In Search Of, is especially the fact that you can find it online still, is I bet we could rediscover some really good stories that people, for whatever reason, stopped talking about in the last couple decades. It's like if it's not happening at Eastern State or one of the really big ones that all the ghost shows hit over and over again, then it's irrelevant now. And as Jeff Belanger says, the only way history dies is if we stop talking about it. That's how ghost stories come to an end, is if we stop talking about it. So let's keep these stories going. Oh, okay. So yeah, Kindred Spirits. I've only seen one episode, which Max referenced in his other comment, which is coming up. Railroad track crossing one. It was actually a really cool episode. We've had the pleasure of meeting the two hosts of that. But yeah, it definitely neat to try to help people out. I think a lot of ghost shows do this really phony thing. We're going to try to help these people. It's like, meanwhile, they show up with the cameras. They get a half hour to an hour of entertainment, and then they hit the road to the next one. These people actually, I do think, they try to give some solace. The opposite of that, though, I do have to say, is the Dead Files, where Amy Allen will come in and say, "Oh, you're be eaten by an alien. Peace out." It's unreal how much she freaks out the people that she's supposedly coming there to help out. I've only seen a handful of episodes because I can't take that one. It's so over dramatic that it's a little too much for me. So Max says, I don't remember In Search Of. I have to look it up. And Ghost Adventures used to be my guilty pleasure, but now it's just annoying. They're so focused on evil and demons and shite, and I just don't care enough. So I definitely agree. Kindred Spirits is my new favorite. And the Ghost Train, there we go, episode was amazing. And that was the only episode I've seen, I think. Maybe I've seen two, but that was a really cool episode of Kindred Spirits. And Ghost Adventures. Oh, yeah, what I always like to say about Ghost Adventures, and not to come to its defense, but just to report what I know. I've never met any of the main cast of Ghost Adventures, but the fact is that the research department is Jeff Belanger, and it was Dave Schrader. I don't know if he's still doing that, but now he's got the Holzer files, so I could see him being too busy with that. Ghost Adventures, they definitely, I believe in those two so much, their research. They're at least going in with good information. And what happens after that is anybody's guess, but they're going in with very solid information. And I've heard anecdotally from a couple of people that have interacted with Zach. First off, I think anybody that watches the show and sees him, you think this guy has a TV show just because he wants to be famous and he wants to be the center of attention. And that's really how it reads. It's how it read to me as well. And I had one friend that did a conference with him where she was also a speaker, and she said I couldn't make small talk with the guy. He only wanted to talk to me about ghosts. He only wanted to talk about the paranormal. And for a full weekend of trying to hang out together, his interest at least seems legitimate. And also, I spoke with somebody else. Somebody actually that took my tour in LA was one of his bodyguards, and he says he doesn't go out very much. I would assume that he would be the type to show up and say, "Hey, everybody, buy me drinks. Let's party." But he doesn't really go out very much, and he's very socially anxious. So he doesn't like people to be too close to him or crowding him. So therefore, he's kind of a quieter person than you might expect, which again is very contrary to his public persona. So hey, take that what you will. That actually makes me like him a bit more. Oh, huge shout out! I meant to do this earlier, but Bart Wyden. I've actually never tried to say your last name, Bart. Thank you. Bart has been going through my entire YouTube library and watching all of my videos. He's up into the modern era where the cameras are now good, and he's commenting on all the videos, and I really, really appreciate each one that comes in. And I know there's a lot I have to comment on because you're faster than me. He's going through so many videos and commenting. Kathleen, who I was just mentioning about earlier, In Search Of also. So three. In Search Of is strongly in the lead right now. And Night Stalker. Of course, Night Stalker became X-Files in a way. It was what inspired Chris Carter. It's a show I still embarrassingly need to watch. Here's Chris Hatton. In Search Of. Boom. 4. In Search Of was the best. To this day, I can remember the eerie atmospheric music, which perfectly augmented their reenactments. I kind of forgot to talk about a lot of what I want to talk about. And right now, as we're about to grill out, I've got some time to kill as I'm waiting for the coals to ash over. So I thought, hey, let's hang out and chat here on a Friday evening. First off, some other stuff I forgot to talk about is I wanted to spread the positivity, showing that there's awesome people out there doing awesome things. We had there's a really cool thing that's in process right now. There is in Wisconsin, there's a place called, or a trail called the Ice Age Trail, which goes along the edge of the driftless region, which I didn't even know what that was until living up here. But it's where right on the edge of where the glaciers existed and cut across the land, and right across where they didn't cut across the land. That's the driftless area where the glaciers did not drift over that area. And there's a guy named Corey. He is running this trail from beginning to end, and it starts up in northwest Wisconsin on the Minnesota border, and then dips all the way down, almost all the way down to Illinois, down to the Janesville area. He ran through the Madison area on Wednesday, and we were able to go out and cheer him on. And then it curls back up to go to the northeast and actually ends in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, right at the beginning of Door County, which is so cool. And that's 1,200 miles, which is taking him. I mean, the record is 22 days. So he's doing, doing a couple of marathons a day, every day, for the better part of a month. If he makes the record or not, just the fact that he's doing it, he's pushing hard to finish. It's really a good reminder that there's really cool people out there doing really cool things. And he's doing this also to raise money for a charity. Again, really, really awesome stuff. And on that note as well, I think Facebook is such a toxic place for so many people, which is why I'm barely on it anymore. Because I want to hang out with my friends and family, and it's fine to voice your opinion, but I think most of what I end up seeing is just like vitriol and making fun of other people's opinions and all that, and it's like, I don't want to surround myself with that. So here's a little challenge that I'll do as well. Go through your friends list, because we all have friends lists of like hundreds, if not thousands of people, and most of whom we don't talk to and we haven't talked to for years. Try to find somebody that you haven't talked to in 5 years or more, and just send them a note out of the blue, just to say hi, maybe share a fun memory or something like that, just to spread positivity. And probably not too, don't reach out to an ex, because that just gets murky immediately, so avoid that idea. But otherwise, yeah, go out there and spread some positivity. Jono, too much cardio for me. I give him credit. Yeah, absolutely. Like, this guy sprained his ankle on this trail hundreds of miles ago, and he has not taken a break because he's trying to go for a record. And again, even if he doesn't get the record, he's pushing himself and he's doing something just ungodly. 1,200 miles in a row. And last night he actually only slept 15 minutes. I can't imagine what the recovery time is going to be like for this. Anyway, getting back to what we were talking about on Wednesday, which I kind of blanked that I had more to talk about on it, is the idea of the genre of paranormal television, those paranormal reality shows. And I do have not a lot of experience, but some experience with them myself. I do have a lot of experience pitching them. And, I'll just go back all the way to my beginnings, 1999, doing Voices from the Chicago Grave, the documentary, not a reality show, with my friends, Jeff and Jason. And this was definitely not professional. It was just a fun thing to do. But in doing it, I wanted to try to make the experience as pristine as possible. As the researcher and the director or planner or whatever, I had to know everything, but I thought it would be really good to keep one person completely in the dark about things, as a very loud truck goes by behind me. That way, if they had an experience like, oh, I thought I heard a horse galloping. Did you guys hear that? If that person didn't know that there are reports of a ghost horse that's seen galloping through this area, they're like, whoa, that's a really cool, eyewitness account there. There's a lot more credibility to it. And I haven't really seen this happen too much with different shows yet. It's something that should really come back. I don't know, I think it's interesting. And the other cool thing from a director standpoint that happened as a side effect of that is the person that went in not knowing any of the history or the alleged hauntings of the place, they were really scared, like way more scared than the other two of us, which again just made for really good TV. So all these shows like Destination Fear that tried to say like we're analyzing fear, well, that's something that maybe they could use. But I'll talk a little bit about Mysteries at the Museum, which is a show. It's been on for so long. People don't really think. I mean, it's not a reality show. It's more of I don't know. I guess a docu-style narrative with reenactments where they slowly unveil a unique item that's at a museum, and then again they build up the mystery of what this item is, even though we know going in what this item is. But then they tell the story about it and how they unfold it. It's kind of like revealing a mystery. The show's been on for a very long time. Don Wildman is the host, and it's kind of an ideal show because it's really easy to produce, really easy, cheap to produce and create. they did a spin-off show that, again, the original is Mysteries at the Museum. They did a spin-off show called Monumental Mysteries, which was all supposed to be about like um, monuments, obviously, or state parks, the Grand Canyon, like, or places that are on the historic registry. So they approached me when I was doing my LA Hauntings tours to talk about one of the original 13 Spanish missions in California. Just because I have, and they did a good job kind of building up. Like, we're not just talking to anybody; we're talking to people who have a credibility and have a background in this field. But that said, they approached me. I'm like, I don't know about the location that you're talking about. And they said, oh, it's fine. We need to find you as the expert. And now, we've done a lot of the writing, so we kind of need these words to come from you, which I was uncomfortable with that because, just like when I wrote my book, I didn't want to write about a place if I hadn't been there. So that's why I visited all the places I wrote about in my book many times to be able to come from a place of authenticity. But they're like, you've got a couple of weeks before we're going to shoot. So if you want to research, we encourage you to. We're happy for you to, and basically double check our work. And in doing my research, I found that they had kind of confused certain facts with a mission of the same name in Texas. So right there, it was really good to be able to do some fact checking and correcting right off the bat. But really, one of the great stories that came out of this was, again, I didn't want to talk about a location I hadn't been to, so let's do a road trip. I went up to this location, looked around, visited, and it was really it's an amazing place to see, and I will have to try to link to it as well, after the fact. But something interesting that came out during the story. So the story is that it was a Spanish mission for a while, and then later in the years, the Wild West, the gold rush happened, and somebody bought this property and turned it into a hotel. And this person was a huge bragger. So he would just boast about how much gold he had hidden in the floors of this place. Just try to puff his chest out, make himself seem important and interesting, I guess. So this guy gets the word out there that there's gold hidden in this building. Of course, this isn't going to end well. Some bandits spread the word. They got a posse together, and they came in and absolutely massacred everybody in the building so they'd have time to rip up the floorboards, tear down the walls, looking for this gold. Of course, we actually don't know whether or not there was ever gold. But, of course, a big posse is formed, and they went out. They did end up finding and catching these people and executing them, very vigilante style. And to this day, there are hauntings associated with this building. And so I guess that's what the mystery of this one is, like, why is this place haunted? And then we go back in time and tell the story. So here's that. I mean, that's already interesting enough, but here's where it gets extra interesting, is when the production company approached, because now in present day it is a church, so it is a religious building once again. When they approached saying, hey, we want to be able to come here and film and tell the story of your church, they were at first understandably confronted with, no, we don't want you filming here. We don't want it to have anything to do with this. We don't want it to get out all these stories about human sacrifice. Wait, what? We had no idea about the stories of human sacrifice happening there at all. And it's still a mystery, but we wouldn't have known anything about that. And they said, no, we want to talk about the massacre that took place here in the ghost stories. You're like, oh, yeah, that's fine, no problem. But, leave the human sacrifice tales out of it. So talk about a mystery on top of a mystery. We still don't know exactly what happened up at this location and what in the world is the connection with human sacrifice at one of these original Spanish missions. And sure enough, they did call back. I think it was, I don't know if it was the same season or the next season. They wanted me to talk about a different paranormal location. I'm like, okay, so where in California are we looking at now? And it was about a UFO sighting and cattle mutilations in, I believe it was in Utah, which again is wild because I'm the ghost guy in LA, but once you're into that world, you are in that production short list of who's going to get called. You keep getting those calls, and so that is something that I talked about a lot last time. The problem with paranormal TV is that it is entertainment, and being so, it is such a commodity. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm making or looking down on it, but we just have to understand what it is. these are people with production schedules that have to get stuff done on deadlines, and that is a big difference between creating an entertaining TV show and doing a scientific study. So that's something that we should always remember. So the other show I was involved with was an internet show. Awesomeness TV is one of the biggest YouTube channels out there, and really they aim for a demographic in the younger teens. And again, I don't know who's behind them. Probably by now Disney has acquired them, and actually I think that might be accurate. But I was approached, actually, Max and I, we both went to the Linda Vista Hospital in East LA, Boyle Heights. This is a very long story, but I'll keep it down to just really the production side of it. The idea was that there was this group of young teen boys that known as the Janoskians, based out of Australia, and they had their own very popular show, and Awesomeness TV was trying to incorporate them more and more, and and ride those coattails because they were getting the views and the clicks. And so it was like 15-year-old boys, and the idea, and again, they were pranksters and like stuntmen. There was the Australian version of Jackass, is how it was pitched to me. We want to do something for Halloween where you take them to a haunted location. All right, sure, whatever. Sounds fun to me. And not the most ideal setting for an investigation situation. A bunch of boys that are trying to be funny on camera, but still, I'm game. And the tough thing about shooting in LA is that every place is so busy and public, and it's hard to reserve, especially on a budget for an internet show. It's hard to like rent out the Biltmore or something like that, a big location, as I get buzzed by a wasp. So I said, Linda Vista Hospital would be a pie in the sky dream, because that's a place you aren't in downtown. It's quieter. It's in a neighborhood, and it's not a place that's in use. So you could really cordon it off and just run the place. But again, I didn't expect them to have the budget for it, but they did rent it out. And this was one of the last nights ever that this was still just a closed down, condemned hospital, because within a couple of days, it was, the purchase had already happened, but in a couple of days, ownership transferred to a company that was turning it into retirement homes and like assisted living community type place, which again, I shouldn't say again because I haven't talked about it yet here, but it's the worst idea because it's one of the most violently haunted locations. It's the most haunted building I've ever been in my life to this day. And but we were able to do it. But so here's the thing. On the production side, the producers said that these are the pranksters, but we want to prank the pranksters. I'm like, well, okay, I don't really want to be involved in any kind of like fake stuff in the ghost hunting world. So they had a handful of different things that they wanted to do to try to creep the boys out. And I said, well, listen, you're going to do what you're going to do. I won't lead anything on, and I'm not going to buy into it either. Like, I'm not going to try to amp it up, but if they get freaked out because of something you're doing, fine. But also, I get to do a response video on my own channel where I shoot my own footage, even from that night, and I can put it all together, and I can tell the audience, the people that actually care, because I know most people even watching that just want to see these kids because they're, these young heartthrob types, and they don't really care about the ghost stories. But for my people, I get to tell the story and show behind the curtain, and so that was the trade-off. They were totally fine with it, and it was great, and it ended up being unbelievably creepy and haunted, and stuff happened that I couldn't believe happened. So often you go to a paranormal investigation and honestly nothing happens at all. But something happened right off the bat where we were in one of these hallways and trying to do an EVP session, actually a spirit box session, where you have the radio that's going through the frequencies, and just nothing at all is happening, and as expected. But then I say, after I've kind of exhausted everything else I wanted to ask, said, hey, are you really quiet right now because you don't want us to be down here? In which case, move an object, and that'll just be a signifier that you don't want us here, and we will move. And sure enough, something right behind me moved. And the boys heard it, even over the sound of the spirit box, all that noise. So I'm like, all right, well, we're out of here. That usually doesn't happen, like on cue like that. And I think the biggest thing, there's a video, again, like I said, the response video really goes over every little thing, but a couple of moments that really were profound to me was we were in the boiler room, which is a place that the Ghost Adventurers talked about incorrectly. They said it was the cremation room and that there's still human bones in the ashes, and which is all nonsense. It's not true. Um, but well, actually, I wanted to turn this into a bit of a experiment as well, where I told some false stories on purpose to these kids to try to see if maybe we could get an EVP to come out that matches the lie I told. Because if we have all of these people thinking about the same thing, maybe we could do some sort of a psychic test here. They believed it. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that happen, but that's still something I want to pursue further as well. But we were, again, in the boiler room area. It's like I spooked the hell out by the door opening. That'll be fun for me on the replay. Jolted and everything. No, it's great. I was there. I was mentally there in my head. Wendy giving a cameo appearance.
Hi. Oh, hi. The camera's over
Yep. It's a huge, tall room with catwalks that go across it, and we were all hearing people walking around the catwalks the whole time while we were down there, and I really just thought it was the producers, either trying to freak us out or being caught because they were walking too heavily, and so I noticed it. You couldn't not notice it, but I didn't spend too much time thinking about it. I didn't try to film up there because I thought I would capture the producers, and that would kind of spoil the moment that they were trying to create. But then later I talked to them. I said, hey, we spent a lot of time in that boiler room. What were you guys doing while we were in there? And they had no idea even where it was in the building. So it wasn't them. There was no doubt about it. We all heard footsteps walking around on the catwalks. That was freaky. And then also, during this time, again, using the spirit box, which is the radio frequency, the rapidly switching radio frequencies to try to make contact and have voices come across those in the moment, I was able to put it into the boiler, which is really cool, which, hasn't worked in decades, because it's this big, huge cast iron fortified thing. So you wouldn't get radio interference, and we were not getting radio interference, which is really awesome. It's finally a pristine environment for this kind of a thing. But a single female voice continued to come through for a large portion of the night, and it sounded like such a quiet, off in the distance voice. And I remember asking, can you try to speak up? Can you try to talk louder so that we can hear you easier? And the voice came across saying, it's hard. And something about, I don't know if it was a psychic impression or if it was just the tone of the voice, but it was so heartbreaking that it gave me a lump in my throat when it happened. But I think that's something else to think about when you're watching these shows. And, I can't vouch for all of these popular shows because I haven't been on them. I haven't seen how they work. But I think when you're there in the moment, sometimes a voice might come across, whether it's an EVP or a spirit box, and to you as the television viewer, it sounds like nothing. But they're like, oh my God, they said so-and-so. I think there's some combination there between an actual audio thing coming across and also an impression, a message being sent, however you want to say it, through energy or psychically or whatever. I really do believe that there's a chance, at least, that these people are experiencing more than we're able to witness as TV viewers. I think, though, those were my experiences with Awesomeness TV and then Mysteries at the Museum. I would love to do a whole series later that's more on the writing and development side, where we talk about how I've crafted pitches over the years and how I've reached out to different production companies. Probably do this through the International Screenwriters Association. But I guess one last bit of insight is I've been invited to pitch more often than I've tried to pitch a story, which is pretty interesting. And one of the ones that blew my mind was getting a message on Instagram one day from a production company in New York saying that, hey, we really enjoy what you're doing on Instagram. Would you like to pitch us a show? Like, really? That's how shows are coming about nowadays? And yeah, sure enough, then fortunately I've had a couple of concepts kicking around, and I was able to pitch the show and was able to sell the show. Of course, it goes down the road a long ways, and you have multiple pitch meetings, and things frequently go nowhere. But yeah, just to be part of the creative experience and working with production companies and then figuring out how to approach different television stations differently is, I don't know, I really enjoy that part of the journey. But again, thank you anybody who came in at this impromptu cookout night, minor ghost story telling session. Really I have so much more energy than I did on Wednesday night. So thank you for letting me finish this strong. Oh, Max is here, and I wanted to mention this to everybody who's watching. And I see Robin Davis joined. Always a pleasure to hear from Robin, and I hope Ted is doing well. They were wonderful guests of ours on the Fantastic Story Society just a couple episodes back, so you should absolutely check that out. And just posted today, I hope it's live now, because I posted it a while ago, and I don't know if it has really seeded all the different places where podcasts go. But our latest episode is with Kathy Kressel. Amazing. She's a great storyteller. She works in a library, which is great if you want to get into haunted history and crime stories, which is what she's really into. And I don't think we've ever had a case where you're talking to a creative person, a storyteller, so blatantly and obviously when you try to talk about, where does this inspiration come? Where did you find the need to be a storyteller? She talks about living in her home, ghost stories happening, but really, and nothing over the top. Although some of the ultimate story that she talks about is kind of unbelievable, like incredible level of unbelievable. But she ends up researching her own home to try to understand what's going on there. And meanwhile, she's having a tough time as a mom with not getting along with her husband and trying to raise the kids, and then finding out that they're living in a home where the previous owners, the husband killed the wife and then killed himself. So boom, she writes and tells stories because she wants to speak for the victims and the families that are left behind. So really, really fantastic. Fantastic saying that on purpose this time. So check that episode out. Just search anywhere podcasts are found at for Fantastic Story Society. Spotify, especially, we're up there now. A lot of iHeartRadio. Again, a lot of places. But it's about time to put some meat on this grill here. Thank you guys for hanging out. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Just have a good time, one and all, and I will see you on the next one this coming Wednesday.